Andy Nowicki, AltRightNovelist.com. I wanted to talk today about a few things surrounding the swirling semi-controversy of the supposed scandalous, salacious sex tapes that I just call them scandalous and salacious. Doesn't do them justice if indeed they exist and indeed they contain the material that they're said to contain. It goes a ways beyond being salacious. Supposedly these tapes depict or display Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin abusing a child, and there are details out there, rumored details out there concerning this supposed instance of abuse, sexual abuse, that are difficult to read. The details are difficult to read, and I'm not going to go into them here. So this video is rumored to exist, and there's all kinds of talk about it, and supposedly it can be found, or maybe it there's still, I'm really not totally sure what the deal is at this point. It's supposed to be somewhere out there on the deep web, or maybe it's not out there on the deep web yet, but it's rumored to be dropped soon. As they say, dropped. That's the kids' lingo these days. On the deep web, there are still shots of this supposed video, and of course there are other people who say this is all just, like Admiral Akbar would say, a trap, and it's a setup, and people are being overly credulous about it, and it's a way to discredit Pizzagate researchers and so forth, and so that we shouldn't believe it. But other people are more on the fence about it. I don't have any opinion about it. I'm not going to take a stand as to whether I think this video actually exists or not. And of course, if it does exist, then you have to prove that that it's really them in it, and that it's not just staged. And it's also rumored to take place at Comet Pizza Ping Pong, which in a way is almost too perfect. It's like and I'm just thinking of this now, but it's like if I were somebody who wanted to discredit Pizzagate researchers, and I am a believer in Pizzagate, hashtag Pizzagate. I'm a believer in it insofar as what Pizzagate means, what Pizzagate signifies, is that there is a great deal of high-level commission of child abuse, child sexual abuse, child sexual slavery, conducted by or overseen by high-ranking officials. I believe that is true, that is happening, that has been happening for a while. I wish it were not true. Believe me, I do. And I talk about this elsewhere. I would prefer it not to be true. I'd prefer to believe that the high-level politicians and judges and other officials, high-placed officials, those who run the world, the politicians, the high-ranking politicians, and those above them, those who pull their strings. I would rather believe that these people are just venial and incompetent and so forth, and that they are corrupt only in a certain more human way, more human in the sense of more understandable. But I'm afraid I don't believe that. I'm afraid that, in fact, and this is not a partisan issue either. It's a little bit irritating how Pizzagate has become this has been construed as a partisan matter. When I first found out about these kinds of goings on, it was when I studied the Franklin scandal, and I talk about this elsewhere. But the Franklin scandal out of Nebraska, which this all went down in the late 80s and early 90s. But well, the activity that was supposedly uncovered took place mostly in the 80s in Nebraska and elsewhere. And this activity generally involved conservative Republicans, up to and including George Bush Sr., allegedly. Okay. So this was how I first found out about it. And it was, Franklin, it's all Republicans. It's a Republican thing, okay? Pizzagate, the issues surrounding Pizzagate, the officials that are exposed in Pizzagate, James Alefantis, the Podesta brothers, Hillary Clinton, etc., they are Democrats. Yes, but this is not an issue of the Democrats are uniquely depraved, and if we just could keep the Democrats out of power and keep voting in Republicans, things will get better, and this corruption, this high-level corruption and depravity will cease to be. That's not the case. That is not how I see it. That is not how I think anyone would see it who really looks into these matters. It's not a partisan issue, except for the except in the sense that anything is becomes partisan, you know, when you get into people who want to lower the age of consent to 12, like one of our Supreme Court justices right now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and others who argue that child sexuality, you know, children are sexual, and, you know, intergenerational sexuality and pedosexuals, as they are called in some places, you know, they aren't really that bad, and blah blah blah. And to the extent that there is a partisan movement afoot to legitimize some forms of sexuality that I don't think any civilized person would take to be legitimate in any way. Okay, in that sense, opposing the normalizers of perversity, okay, you could say that that's a partisan thing. But the thing is, the normalizers of perversity, those who practice this type of perversity, they're all over the map as far as politics go. They're Democrats, they're Republicans, they're liberals, they're conservatives. It seems to be a matter that pertains to the political class generally, and it's not a Democrat-Republican issue in that way. Anyway, I got a little far afield here. I wanted to talk about this alleged video, not the video itself, because again, I have no way of knowing, and I don't want to speculate. And in a way, when you get into the speculation of whether it's real or not, I just that seems like sinking into the briar patch, or sinking into quicksand. It just never, you know, it's like you can't pull yourself away from it, and there's no it's like, even if this video were found and if it were shown, as I was saying a few minutes ago, I think people would argue that it's a fake, that it's a forgery, and I don't see there being any way that there's no way that, you know, that we'll ever know for sure. Okay, whether this video is out there, whether it's real or not, I don't think that will ever be resolved. What I do find interesting is that you don't see Hillary Clinton or Huma Abedin out there saying this is outrageous that people are saying these things, and we will take them down because we're going to sue the hell out of everybody who says these things are happening, who says that we are practicing these things, because we're so offended by the allegation that we would ever do such things. You know, just like with most Pizzagate matters, they're not doing that. They're keeping their mouths shut. They're not talking about anything. They're not confronting what people are saying. And that seems like a legal strategy to me. And that's not something I can relate to at all. I mean, I can tell you, no matter how high level I got to be, if there were people out there saying that I was doing things to kids, I would go nuclear on them. I would absolutely, you know, if people were slandering me in that way, trying to paint me as a child molester, I would be enraged, and I would take them down if I were, you know, in a legitimate way, not in a, you know, I'm not saying that I would go above or beyond the law, but if I had the means, you know, if I were a powerful person, I had money, I had clout, and people out there were slandering me like this, you know, I would absolutely go to war to clear my name. And these people are not doing that. They're not going to war. They're playing it safe. They're laying low. That's strange. Does that prove that they are guilty? It doesn't prove anything. But to me, it implies that they are not unstained spiritually, legally, and otherwise. That they're employing this type of strategy of laying low and of not even addressing people saying these things. I mean, this is somebody who could have been the president of, who could have become the most powerful person in the world. And now people are out there saying that she's torturing a child in a video. I mean, and she's not saying anything in response that I know of. She's not, again, she's employing the strategy of laying low. Just like the Podesta Bros and the rest of them. They're not answering, what did you mean by this or that in the WikiLeaks emails? What did you mean when you talked about walnut sauce? What did you mean when you talked about delicious cheeses and, you know, let's have pizza for an hour and all this coded language. There's a map that seems pizza related. All this lingo. Dreaming of our hot dog stand in Hawaii, you know, spirit cooking with the Marina Abramovich. Why, you know, if you are blameless, if people are saying all these outrageous things about you that aren't true, why in the world would you not come out and say, look, this is ridiculous. Here's what I meant by this. Here's what I meant by that. And if you continue to say otherwise, you know, I've got money, I've got power, I've got clout, I will take you to court, because I do not take this lightly, being called a pervert, a child molester. That's what I would do, but that's not what they're doing. That's not what they've done. But let me just finish up here by stating the point that I was really wanting to make in the first place before I got more or less sidetracked with a bunch of other stuff that I think is also relevant. But But let me just return to the matter of people's reaction to the allegation. Of course, respectable people just automatically respond that this is outrageous, that of course this can't be true, of course it's ridiculous, that people are wackos if they believe this. This is what the respectable types say, simply reflexively. They don't say it looking at the evidence. They don't say it as, they claim to be debunkers. They claim that this or that has been debunked, but nothing has been debunked in these matters. They haven't done any debunking, but they've simply said, they've simply published articles in respectable journals and news outlets that say Pizzagate is outrageous, it's not true, and then they claim that that's a debunking, and they interview the people involved. They interview James Alefantis, or I guess he's the only one that they've interviewed, or they give a quote from Hillary Clinton saying how despicable and deplorable Pizzagate believers are. And they say that this is, okay, so there you go, it's been debunked. They deny it, so it's debunked. What the hell is that? That's nonsense. That's not using your mind. That's not analyzing the evidence. I mean, if you don't want to believe it, you don't have to believe it. I'm not saying that you have to take anyone's word for it that it's true, but to accept that this is debunking when this is anything but a debunking. This is a denial. A denial is not a debunking. So here's the point that I was trying to make, that I'd like to finish with in this monologue / rant, and that is, it's kind of strange how there is this assumption that people who you don't know, who are famous, who are politicians, who are, presidential candidates, and so forth, there's this weird presumption that they can't be dirty, filthy perverts who harm children. There's this weird presumption that that these people that you don't know couldn't possibly be into these kinds of terrible things. Well, why not? Why do you presume that they can't be? Why do they get the presumption of innocence? Not saying legally speaking, everybody gets the presumption of innocence. But why do you presume that they are innocent? Just because, I don't know, they're on TV or something. It's like if you found out that some guy or some woman living in your neighborhood down the street from you, if you found out that there were accusations of child abuse or child trafficking or all kinds of dark, terrible things involving children, if you found out that this guy down the street was accused of these things, would you just say to yourself, oh, he can't be innocent? I mean, he can't possibly be guilty because that's just outrageous that anyone would accuse him of those kinds of things. No, you wouldn't. You would, hopefully you wouldn't think, yeah, he must be guilty, but you wouldn't just think to yourself, well, these must be trumped up charges and people are just insane. People are just, people who believe this kind of stuff, are just crazy. Any witnesses, any alleged victims who come forward, they're obviously just out of their minds. They can't be believed. They're not credible. Look, they're claiming that this guy down the street abused them when they were children. No, if it's a guy down the street or a woman in your neighborhood, some nobody, you wouldn't give them the presumption of innocence in your mind. But somehow, when it's Hillary Clinton, who we know is just such a sterling character, who's the Clintons and everybody who surrounds them are just such wonderful people. I mean, we already know that they couldn't possibly be involved in anything shady or evil, or the Bushes, for that matter, just to make it nonpartisan or to cross the partisan lines. The Clinton-Bush axis. I mean, these people are up to their eyeballs in filth and corruption. Without even the child trafficking allegations brought into it. These are bad, bad people. At least, okay, this is my take on them from everything I've heard, everything I've read, everything I've researched. And, but anyway, why would I'm just speaking to the common man here who might happen to be watching. Anyway, the sort of the regular citizen, the regular Joe who preens himself on being respectable, who listens to NPR and reads the New York Times and looks down his nose at conspiracy theorists. Why? I mean, I'm just talking to you not as in any partisan way, but I'm just asking a question. Why would you give this presumption of innocence to high-level politicians or to other high-level people? Why would you think that allegations against them must not be true when somebody in your neighborhood who you don't even know, who you don't really know that well, if they're accused, you would just think to yourself, well, maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. But for some reason, if it's a politician, and especially if it's a politician that you liked or that you voted for or something like that, I understand the partisan mindset just clicks in, and that happens. It happens to everybody. I mean, we all get partisan, unduly partisan at times, and just come to think that anything anybody says about our guy or our girl can't possibly be true. It must be just something that their enemies have tried to pin on them. But putting all of that aside, I mean, just looking at people as people, taking away the D's and the R's from their names. I mean, people like Hillary Clinton or George Bush or James Alefantis or Larry King, notorious, not the TV broadcaster Larry King, but Larry King from the Franklin scandal. Look him up if you want. Or anyone else. Why would you just presume that charges against them of child trafficking, child abuse, committing atrocities against children, why would you just presume that these charges must be incorrect, they must be wrong, they must be trumped up, people who believe in them must be crazy, when you would never assume that people who think that the guy living down the street from you who's been accused of things, you wouldn't just automatically presume that his accusers must be crazy, that people who believe that he's guilty must be crazy. It's a very peculiar mental block that, again, if you are watching by some chance, it's a mental block that I challenge you to get beyond. I'm not saying you have to believe afterwards anything that's being alleged, because you should look at the evidence and make up your own mind, but you shouldn't just automatically presume that it can't be true, because that's absurd to exempt high-level people who, generally speaking, I mean, you got to do bad things to rise through the ranks, to become powerful in the first place. I mean, you got to have some skeletons in your closet if you are, if you've managed to ascend to that level. You've had to do some dirty deeds here or there. Depending, it may not be that dirty, but people like that should be even more suspicious in your eyes, is the point that I'm making. They're already sleazebags for having managed to ascend to be the scum that rises to the top, to use a metaphor. So they should not be exempt in any way from consideration of having committed atrocities against children. That's my word. That's my just some thoughts concerning the issues surrounding this alleged Hillary Clinton, Huma Abedin child abuse, sex abuse video that's ostensibly out there somewhere, possibly on the dark web. My name's Andy Nowicki. Check out my work at altrightnovelist.com. Thank you for watching.